and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home child givers and those affected in their world. This is for the children, the parents, the extended family, and everyone else their lives touch. Our goal is to offer real-life topics and learning through discussing real topics, real issues, and offering real solutions. Tonight, we're going to do things just a little bit different because I'm not going to be interviewing someone tonight like we usually do. Instead, I am going to share with you tonight. It really prompted this. In a recent discussion in some online groups and a recent chat with a nanny friend of mine who was offering coaching to some other nannies who were looking for jobs and were interviewing, she shared some frustrations and also some surprise about what the particular person she was working with knew and didn't know about interviewing in today's virtual world. And so I'm going to be talking to you about that. Now, we have an expert on interviewing techniques that we're going to bring on another time, but tonight what I'm going to focus on specifically is interviewing in a virtual world. The tips, the tricks, the tech, and maybe one or two of the catastrophes that can occasionally happen and have happened to me in this virtual world. Many of you know that as the owner of Newborn Care Solutions, I've been educating in the virtual world for over 5 years now as part of my 35-year career now in the nanny and newborn care world. And I've educated at conferences and a lot of different things for many times. But it took a while for me to get really comfortable educating on camera and really speaking to you out there in the audience without having live people around me. Now, when I interview somebody, it's super easy because I have someone to talk to. They're opposite me on the screen, and I really can get going on that. But over the last 5 years, I've had to get really comfortable in front of the camera. I've had to do major newspaper and network interviews over camera. Of course, I teach over camera. And now in the world that we're all dealing with, we're all doing this via camera. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've learned and that have really made a difference in terms of doing this. So what we're going to talk about first is technology. And I know that if any of you out there are like me, technology is intimidating. I don't like technology. I like babies. I like to scuba dive. I like to read. I like to knit. I have the things I like to do, and I'm really comfortable in those arenas. But when I get into the world of tech, I get uncomfortable pretty quick. So for those of you out there who are my age or maybe just a little older or just a tiny bit younger, you might remember an Apple IIe. That was the first computer I ever owned. And everything was done in DOS, and we played, Pac-Man on our computer, things like that everybody chuckles about now, and they call it vintage. I'm not vintage yet, and neither are those things. But the reality is that our tech world is changing faster than we possibly can imagine sometimes. But there are a few things that if we're going to interview online, we've got to master. So we're going to talk first about connectivity. What does that mean? What is that? It's essentially you need to get connected to the internet. And so many of us are doing it, and I've got a lot of props tonight, but so many of us are doing it on tech, on our phones, on our tablets, on our Kindles, on our computers, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, etc. But here's the thing. If we're going to be interviewing on that, we need to understand the functionality of it. So I'll give you a little example, and it'll make a little more sense in a minute. But for example, I'm doing this via Zoom, and it gets put out there via a whole variety of things that get it onto our Facebook, right? That does not change the fact I need to know how to use Zoom on the device that I'm working on. And so if I'm on my phone, I have to know how to do Zoom on my phone. Or I have to know how some of the functions on my phone are. Key are two things. Whether it's your phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, whatever. Know how to turn the video on and off, and know how to turn the microphone on and off. There are a lot of reasons, and we'll talk about those when we talk about disasters. But you need to know, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, if you have the option hardwire in. That means connect to your Ethernet, because that's a stronger and more reliable signal than Wi-Fi. But I have even done things via a laptop that was tethered to the Wi-Fi access on my phone, both of them being wireless. So there's lots of ways to do this. If you are not sure how to do this, there are tons of YouTube videos, and frankly, most of the programs out there have frequently asked questions and instructions and videos right on their websites. But YouTube has lots and lots of different things that can help you with that. You need to understand how your camera and how your microphone work, no matter what your device is. In my case, you can't see it, but I actually have a completely separate microphone because I need a better quality one than most of you are going to need for home use and interviewing. Many computers, particularly Mac or Apple computers, already have microphones built into them. Not every HP computer has a microphone and or a camera. So you need to look into that. Do you have both a camera and a microphone? If you don't, sometimes getting a headset can take care of that problem. And the headset you'll be able to hear, and they'll be able to pick up your voice. AirPods, earbuds, all of those things can help in that arena. And if you are on a phone, having earbuds or AirPods, things like that, can make a huge difference in a variety of different things, but in particularly the sound and the feedback that you will get. You can also get a mini webcam that has a built-in microphone. If in particular your computer video is really grainy or you're getting a lot of echoing and you don't have access to a phone and earbuds, that can be a way to do that. But if that's your case, you need to plan ahead, and we're going to talk about planning, but you need to really make sure that you have looked into this prior to your interview. You don't want to wait until 5 minutes before your interview is supposed to start. And that is one thing I can tell you, I'll share as a small catastrophe, is I had an interview several years ago for a major newspaper. It was about 4 years ago or so. And I had just gotten some new technology and I didn't understand it completely. And I couldn't figure it out, and I totally bombed the interview. I also had an opportunity several years back to be a potential candidate for a reality TV show, and I had to interview via my iPad, but I didn't know how to do it very well. I didn't know how to set things up, so the lighting was bad, my camera view was bad. The whole interview, we were looking up my nose like this, and they could see all the wrinkles on my forehead. And I just did a terrible job and totally bombed it and lost that opportunity. Now, I'm a big believer things happen for a reason, but nevertheless, you need to be prepared. You need to make sure that you know how to do what you're doing ahead of your interview. And here's another reason, because depending on what application or program you're using for the particular video, you might have to download it. Or if you downloaded it a year or two ago, there may be updates, and your computer may force you into those updates before it will let you access it. And finally, in the tech area, you need to make sure that you're using the correct browser, meaning many of us are familiar with Internet Explorer or Safari or Chrome or Firefox. Those are all internet browsers. And not every application works well on every single browser. So for example, right now, I'm coming to you via Zoom, but I'm utilizing my Chrome browser, even though I use Safari for other things. And there is a reason for that. Some browsers are better suited and can handle what that particular program requires better than others. So if you're using FaceTime off an iPhone, if you're using Facebook Messenger video, or if you're using Zoom, you're going to have either Chrome or Firefox most likely. Again, if you don't know what that is, get on your computer, get on your technology, go to YouTube and find out, how do I download this to my device, whatever your specific device is. And you can download those things. Having all this done and set up prior to your interview and knowing how they work is key. You do not want to be late to the interview and make a bad impression, and you don't want to not know what's going on and make a bad impression. And particularly, I'm going to speak for a moment, and I may get in trouble for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to speak to the older nannies and doulas out there. Those of you, and NCS even, those of you that are my age and older, this stuff didn't exist when we were kids. It's not like my teenager who just was practically born knowing how to do these things. Some of these things are foreign to us, and they're challenging, and they're a bit intimidating. That's okay. And I get it, because I don't love it yet, and I'm still intimidated by all this stuff. But families with young children tend to be younger than us now. And so they're much more comfortable with technology. And here's the thing. Sometimes they're uncomfortable with those of us who are not. So getting at least comfortable enough with the interview technology that you're going to be using when you first meet them is a key component. So really look at that. The next thing I want to talk about is optimal lighting. And there's a lot of things around that. You can see from the room that I'm in, it's very bright, and there's light that's on my face. My hair kind of glows because there's light above my head, right? And there are lights on the ceiling. There's lights underneath here. You can use lots of different things. You can use flashlights and mirrors if you need to, but you need to have good lighting, because if I start turning off all the lights, and I'm going to turn off just one here for just a second, look at the difference that makes right there. It already darkens things up. And if I start turning off other lights, it gets darker and darker. Now, this isn't too bad for me, but this is brighter. It allows them to see my face better. And in particular, it allows my eyes to be seen better. And we're going to talk a little more about why that matters later. But your eyes in particular are a key component to interviewing well online. So make sure that you have optimal lighting. Even if the very first videos that I did, I literally taped up flashlights with blue tape and duct tape to cabinets, and one was even to a stand-up like flower pot that I put some rocks in the bottom so it was heavy, and I taped it to the top of it and pointed it at me. There's lots of different things you can do. You can experiment. If you think you're going to be online a lot, you can buy something called a ring light. They make ones that go behind your computer. They make ones that are attached to part of your cell phone. They make big ones on a stand like I have. There's one over my head here. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. If you don't think you're going to need it very often, get yourself in a well-lit room with an ideally relatively blank wall behind you. Notice I've got some books, but other than that, there's just a door and a wall behind me. And there's a window on this side of me, which provides a lot of natural light. Being near windows and against blank walls will help light reflect better and will help you look a little better. It's a big thing. Be aware if you have something like glasses that reflect, and I'm going to show you really quickly. So these glasses that I have on right now, they have a little bit of a reflection, but not a lot. And that's the reason I wear them, because I need the glasses to see the screen. But if I take them off and switch out for my everyday glasses, see the blue and the weird reflection that's on there and how that shines like that almost the whole time? The reason that is because these have a blue light filter in them. Because for any of you who've taken classes from me, you know that blue light is not good for us, particularly if we're using it later in the day or at night, and it has impact on our ability to sleep, that sort of thing. And it also causes eye fatigue. And so a blue light filter is really great, but it doesn't video well. So look at that sort of thing. You want to check your background for distractions. You will notice in every video that we do, my background looks relatively the same. I don't change it up a lot. And the things that are there are my resources, my books that I use to research, my resources for our elite program are in some of those books, workbooks, that sort of thing. Those are relatively innocuous. But you want to check, because if your background is super crazy busy, maybe there's patterned wallpaper and the door is a bright color and there's books, but there's also like a radio there with a clock that has lights or something, those things can be distracting. And when you are distracted on a regular basis, when your viewer is distracted, you know what they're not doing? They're not looking at you. They're not looking at your face, and they're not connecting with you. They're not connecting with your eyes. And particularly if you wear glasses, they need to be able to look through glasses to connect with your eyes too. So this is not the time for your glasses that turn into sunglasses, because they're going to darken in all these bright lights and then they can't see your eyes, and you want them to connect. The other thing, and here's one of our catastrophe stories. Some of you have seen me talk about this, have heard this before, but several years ago, there was a nanny that I knew that was interviewing for a job, and she used her husband's office. Never thought to look into her background, and the calendar in the background, which the family that she was interviewing with felt was rather inappropriate, and she didn't get the job. We don't want to be doing that. So think about what's in your background and really kind of look at it. The best thing I got in my background is that Nanny Stella mug back there from my friend Stella Reed. But nevertheless, check those things out. Tidy up, okay? I had a video call just like a week and a half ago with a friend of mine, and there were 4 or 5 of us that were having coffee. And as I was sitting there chatting with them, I looked over and realized I had a pile of laundry in the background, and I had a thing standing there with a bunch of stuff just thrown on it that I was getting ready to take for donation, and it just looked tacky and really messy. Now, these were just my friends, so it was no big deal. But if you're interviewing with a client who maybe likes to have their home organized and wants somebody who can teach their children how to keep their rooms up, that's not going to give them the best impression. So tidy things up a little bit, even if you're interviewing from your sofa. Turn off alerts on all your devices. Nothing worse than being in the middle of a call and having an alarm go off on your cell phone, having your cell phone ring, having all your email bings coming in. So make sure you turn off all the alerts on all your devices. Turn off your TVs, turn off buzzers on your appliances. You know, things like the buzzer on your dryer for the load of laundry that you threw in, thinking you'd get something done while you were on the call, right? Make sure that all those buzzers are off. Turn on a fan or another source of white noise to muffle sounds. You don't know it per se until I tell you, but there's actually a fan on medium high in the background of this. What it does is it muffles other noises. So if the dog comes walking by and his chain on his collar clinks, unless he joins me right here, or if maybe one of the kids has something going on, it muffles all those sounds. And with that also, pets. Contain your pet. Put them somewhere else unless you're interviewing with a family that loves pets. They might think it's cool. Unless your pet's a barker. You don't need someone barking. And of course, small children. Most of us have seen that video of that BBC reporter whose kids came tearing in the middle of a live report that he was doing, and then his wife had to come tearing in to get the kids out of there. So think about your kids and where they're at also, whether it's your kids, whether it's nanny kids, whatever it is. Number 3, be prepared. Think of answers to typical questions and have them so that you can read them. So I'm going to give you a quick glimpse. These were my original notes, a little bit hard to read, but these are my notes for our presentation before we get started, right? So pay attention, be prepared. Make sure that you have your notes all set up so that you can really be ready to go. And what I have in notes, or what I would have in notes if I was interviewing, answers, just bullet points. I don't need a whole answer, and we'll talk about it in just a second about sounding too pre-recorded, but I want to have answers to typical questions just in bullet points. Now, if I'm interviewing, I've sent my resume ahead of time. Families have already had an opportunity to look at that and really decide, hey, you know, I want to talk to her. So it's not about getting out my resume and showing them that. They have it in front of them. But it is about knowing what's on my resume and being able to answer questions around it. Have things like a glass of water, so that if your mouth gets dry or you start to cough, you can get that glass of water and address it. Have a box of Kleenex nearby in case you start to sneeze or your nose starts to run, so that you can deal with that, okay? Pay attention and think about these things. And of course, have questions for the family that you're interviewing with as well. Part of the reason for this interview is for you to get to know them And you get to do that by asking them questions around the job. Having those questions ready means you're more prepared, you sound more professional, and you get more answers and more information so that you can determine if this is a great match or not. And you want to make sure that all distractions that could potentially come up, think about them. Make sure that you are set up. Things like unplugging the printer next to me so that if somebody else in the house sends something to the print job, it has to wait in the queue and it doesn't actually happen. Practice and work together. This is good for both of you. Using role playing, have one of you be the interviewer and one of you be the person being interviewed, and then swap roles. Why do you swap roles? Because remember those questions for them that I mentioned? You need to be comfortable enough to ask them. So really practice role play and do it over and over and over again until you get comfortable. Here's why too, because you actually need to look at the camera. You need to look at what's going on. You shouldn't be looking at the interviewer, especially depending on how you have things set up. Your interviewer could be in the bottom screen, they could be on the side. And if you're looking over to the side like this the whole time, you're not making eye contact. You need to be looking at your camera so that they can see you. Because studies have shown us that interviewers give a more favorable rating and remember more of what was said by someone that they can make eye contact with, even over the computer. Look for anything that you might need to change while you're practicing or get comfortable with things. So for when I first started doing this, I had a really hard time. I didn't realize I had such strong hand body language, and you may be seeing this coming and going on the screen. It's just something I do naturally. And at first it was really weird, like, ooh, I have to think about not doing that. Not really. No, that's who I am. It's part of my natural body language. And you need to get comfortable with what you are, but also looking at what do I need to change? Maybe you need to change the camera angle, like that catastrophe I mentioned where the iPad was looking at my nose. Had I moved it higher up, it would have had a better angle. Or if it was below me, it also shows the bottom of your jaws. It doesn't look the same. So you want the camera at or actually slightly above where you're at to give the best view of your eyes, to look the best, that sort of thing. Also, practicing helps overcome nerves. Let's be real. You're already nervous many times because you're interviewing, and then you're interviewing on camera and you're thinking, wow, they're recording this. What if I screw it up? I want to make sure I have this right. And getting more comfortable in front of the camera and knowing where it's at and how to do this and getting comfortable looking at yourself on the screen can be huge. When I first started doing this, I was super critical of every single wrinkle, every single thing that wasn't perfect. I'm long over it. And you will get there too. But practicing really can help calm your nerves so that your best you can shine during the interview process. Make sure you have clear, concise, and direct answers to the questions. If they ask you a story about your life, yes, it's a great time to share if you want to, but you don't want to have to share a story that takes 25 minutes. Because if it takes that long, you will lose them in the process. So make sure you're giving really clear and direct, concise answers. That goes back to being prepared with having answers to the typical interview questions. And make sure that when you talk, you're talking about relative things. And if you're sharing anything that's personal, don't talk too much. Remember what you need to share, what you don't need to share, what you should keep private and not. Watch that body language. Make sure that you're sitting up straight. If you're slouching, this shows on camera, right? So you want to sit up in your chair. You want to smile. You want to look at the camera at eye level. Maybe put a sticky note. I did for years. I had a sticky note that right up by my camera sitting up here that went, look here. And I even had one that said, look here, stupid, when I kept forgetting even with that, because that eye contact is huge. If you are constantly doing this and not looking at the camera, you're conveying a message of nervousness, maybe fidgetiness, like you're not paying attention, and you're not connecting, you're not communicating. And we all know that at the end of the day, that connection with a family is such a critical aspect of the job. Dress up a little bit, okay? but appropriate. Think of what you would wear to a live interview. They see you as a professional, but you're a home professional, but you need to be in that professional mode and you need to look the part. But here's another reason why it helps you feel the part, it helps you be the part. But you can get a little bit, careful around that. So, for example, I'm wearing a tank top. I would not wear that on its own to the interview. So I just have a lightweight throw over the top of it. It's just something that has sleeves, whatever. It doesn't have too much pattern. It's got some pattern, but not okay. As long as I don't have stripes competing with flowers, competing with polka dots, that sort of thing. So it's okay to do that. And you want them to see you as a professional. But if you're like me and you're doing this, I'm going to stand up for a second, and you're wearing a pair of shorts, right? And you're wearing your slippers, you want to make sure that when you're interviewing, you don't have to get up. Or if you do have to get up, say everything falls apart and your kids start screaming and the dog starts barking and the doorbell's ringing and you have to put it on pause for a second, what you want to do is this. You stop the video. And there's a reason for that, because if you get up and do something, you don't want them to see that you're wearing a pair of shorts, or maybe you have your pajama bottoms on while you're interviewing and the top half of you looks very professional. Or as happened once in the middle of it was a class I was teaching, but nevertheless, tech catastrophe here. The instructor said, we're going to take a 5-minute break, except she forgot to turn off her camera. And she got up and she bent over in a pair of short shorts, and we all got a view of her backside on live camera, and it was being recorded. And so it's one of those things where paying attention to what's going on is really, really important in terms of that. So be prepared to be able to turn your camera off. So make sure you're dressing professional, you look the part, and you are set to go, because it will not only help you look the part, but you will feel the part as well. Be yourself. You want a great match with a great family, whether it's a short-term NCS or doula job, or whether it's a long-term nanny job. You want to have a good match, because the better the match is between you and the family, the more suited you are to serve them, and the happier you're going to be in the job, and the happier they're going to be with you. The personal side of this is such a key component. And so they need to see and meet you. Yes, put your best foot forward, but make sure it's your foot, not my foot, not somebody else's, but your foot. They have your resume. They already know how fabulous you are professionally. Let them see how fabulous you are in person. Let them get to know you a little bit, and be yourself. It will make a huge difference in terms of you finding the right job and the right fit for you. Follow up. You need to follow up within 24 hours, whether it's the weekday, evening, or weekend. And follow up these days, obviously, via email. We're going to send a thank you note via email to everybody who participated. So if mom and dad, or the kids, or an interviewer from an agency, no matter who it was, send a follow-up thank you. And mention something specific. If you're interviewing with a family and say you're an NCS or a postpartum doula, wow, I really love that you took the camera and showed me around the nursery so I could get a feel for what it is that you're wanting in your household and areas where I can really benefit you. However you want to phrase it, whatever stands out to you, or whatever you felt like you guys really connected over. I love the fact that we talked about your passion for nursing your baby, and the fact that you are wanting to do that. It matters so much to you. And I'm so excited that my background is going to allow me to support you in that journey. But you don't want to write a dissertation. You do want to keep this direct, short, and to the point. If your email's too long, guess what? They're going to read the first paragraph or two and they're going to ditch the rest in the trash. And maybe the most profound thing you had to say was in your closing. So keep it short, keep it professional, but keep it personal as well. And the final tip that I have for you about virtual interviewing. Prepare, prepare, practice, and prepare. This is not the time to wing it. This is not the time to go, yeah, I'll log in 2 minutes before everything starts, and then realize you have to download a program that you don't know how to use and you've never seen before. Or little things like putting your name on the account. So register for an account, put your name on it so they can see it on the screen. It makes a big difference. You want to stand out with the families that you're interviewing with for the right reasons, for the great reasons, for who you are and the amazing talent and skills that you can bring to this position to these families and their children. You don't want to stand out because you screwed up the tech. You showed up looking like you just rolled off the side of a mountain and that you haven't done laundry in a month while your dog is barking at your kids who are screaming and fighting and your partner is yelling at them. There's so many things that can go wrong. And all of those things are going to leave a negative impression. And then they're going to miss out how amazing and wonderful you are. So take these tips, look at them, get your technology right. Make sure your settings, your background, and your lighting are right. Make sure you're prepared with questions, with answers, and everything that you need in order to make that interview go well. Practice, role play, go through it over and over again until you're comfortable in front of the camera. Make sure that you know how to make eye contact with the camera. Make sure that you dress professionally for the interview. Be yourself and follow up. And if you do all of these things, I guarantee that your virtual interviews are going to have much higher rates of success and you're going to do a much better job of landing the job. I have really enjoyed this opportunity to chat with you tonight. So thank you for joining me here on Real Talk. It has been an honor to get to spend this time with you. If you have questions for me about this topic or anything related to this or what we at Newborn Care Solutions offer, put them in the feed and I'll be sure to answer them. And if you're watching this on replay or you want to watch these segments or catch any of our past Real Talk episodes, along with accessing our other content, pop over to newborncaresolutions.com and click on the Education tab. There are pages and pages of amazing resources to help you out in your career. Have a great night and thank you for joining us.